Hello and welcome to the Research Like a Pro question and answer series. I'm Nicole Dyer and today's topic is making a custom GPT for BLM land patent citations. And in this video, I'm going to discuss a workflow that I used for making several citations for a bunch of land patents from the Bureau of Land Management's GLO website. And I wanted to have a way to do it efficiently, but also following the evidence explained template that I chose. And so I started off by using Online Repository Assistant to scrape the data from the page and then put it into a custom GPT. So I'll show a little bit about using that custom GPT and how I set it up. And in the show notes, you'll find a link to the custom GPT in case you'd like to try it as well. All right, I hope you enjoy. Our monthly theme is source citations. And a tip that we always give is to create a citation the first time you see a document. But we all know that that's not always the case. Every time we see a new document, we don't always create the citation. Um, Sometimes for me, if I don't know how to cite that particular document, it's not one that I do a lot, then I kind of feel like, oh, I don't have time right now. I'll do that later. So here's a real life story of what I do. I save the link to my log and then I make time to come back to it and really learn how to cite that record. And I like to make some time so that I can really understand the source and how to cite it. And then I can kind of check off that record type that I've learned how to cite and I can use that in the future. And I put this quote here from Charles Buxton: "You will never find time for anything. If you want time, you must make it." And that's how I feel about our citations and learning about something difficult, that we have to really carve out some time and sit down and do the hard work that is needed. Well, now I'm going to share with you a document that I had to learn how to cite in my 14-day challenge project and kind of some of the tips and tools I use to make it a little bit more efficient. So the record type was a patent from the Bureau of Land Management General Land Office records. And they have a website that you can search. So I was searching for everyone with the surname Keaton living in Mississippi. And almost everyone that came back was one of the relatives that I'm researching. And there were 5 patents for Alexander Keaton, 5 for Ephraim Keaton, and some for their brother, for Ephraim's brother, Abner Keaton. So there were a lot, and all of them were relevant. And I didn't really know how to cite these patents. And you can see here the image. When you first see the patent details, you don't see the image, so you have to click this image button and then you can see this. But some of the details you need to make the citation are here in this tab. So I decided to study evidence explained. And then a lot of you know that I use a tool called Online Repository Assistant, aka Aura, ORA, to help scrape details from the page and put it into the right order so that I can just open the web page and then Aura creates the citation. And that didn't work perfectly because some of the things were all in caps and weird. So I refined it further with a custom GPT to make the formatting smoother. So I'll show you my workflow for generating these citations. It worked really well, and I was really happy with it. So some of us might be wondering, can AI just make the citation? And one of the things that works really well is to take a screenshot, including the URL of the page that has the information you want to cite. And I just thought I would try this, even though this isn't what I actually did, to show you the difference between the one I made with the help of Evidence Explained, Aura, and my custom GPT versus just taking a screenshot and making a citation. So I said, make a source citation in the style of Evidence Explained from this web page, and gave that prompt and image to ChatGPT, and it actually did a pretty good job. This isn't the way that Elizabeth Shown Mills recommends to cite it, but this is totally passable. And you can use this information to find the source. So it works as a source citation. So it's interesting to see how AI can take a screenshot, a URL, and figure this out. It doesn't include the things that usually are included. Like it has the accession number rather than the document number and stuff, but it's still fine because the accession number is unique within the website as well. Well, here's how I did it. Um, and I liked this method too, but that was kind of the shortcut, easy method. But for me, I wanted to learn about, what was the way that Elizabeth Shown Mills recommends in Evidence Explained. I looked in the third edition and later I looked in the fourth edition. Sometimes I still really prefer to use the third edition. So that's what I actually used for this, just because I'm used to that one. But um, the first step, if you want to try this, is to learn how to cite the item with Evidence Explained. And so I located a template in Evidence Explained for the Land Office records online from Bureau of Land Management. And in chapter 11, or if you're in the fourth edition, chapter 12, she has several models or examples. And so I was using this example from the third edition, Land Office records, online materials. And she gave three different ways that you could cite the same thing. And I picked the third example that focused on citing the image with the emphasis on the original document. And this is kind of my preferred method for citing images online. I really like to put the focus on the actual original image, the original document and the image of it, rather than like the database. Because if I'm citing the image, then it feels like I'm focusing on the original rather than if I'm citing the database and the results of that search, I feel like I'm citing the derivative. So since I went ahead and transcribed the document, I want to cite that document. It really doesn't matter that much. It's just kind of personal preference. You can cite either way. Well, after studying this, this is the citation I came up with. Oh, before I show you my citation, just a reminder of the elements of a citation. Who created the source? So that's usually an important question to include. What is the source? So, like a description of it or the title of it. When was the source created, modified, or accessed? So, for online images, you usually are giving this access date. And sometimes you might have multiple layers. So, you might have the source creation date and the access date. Where is the source's physical location or publication place, which is usually a URL if it's an online image, and wherein the source is the item of interest. So this can be like image numbers or um, the item of interest description, like the name of the person and kind of just describing that item you're interested in citing. So this comes from Thomas Jones' book, Mastering Genealogical Documentation. And we often teach this method for creating your citations so that you make sure to include each of these elements. So with the citation I came up with, this follows Elizabeth Shown Mills' example. It starts off with the item of interest or the wherein. So it's Alexander C. Keaton, the name of the person who's patenting the land. And it has his location there, which is common to do in citations just to differentiate him from other men of that name. Then cache entry patent number 8608. So instead of using that accession number that was kind of for the database, this uses the actual land patent number that's on the image of the patent. Then we have the what, which is a description of the database and the website, land patent search, images, general land office records. Then we have the where is, which is where is this published? And so we have I like to include the full URL. That's my preference. ChatGPT didn't include the full URL because a lot of the evidence explained examples don't include that and they just have the base URL. But for me, it's just so important to be able to get to the exact page. And this could change. And so that would be disappointing. But this is just what I chose to include. And at least it does have the base URL within it. Then lastly, we have the when. And this one just has only one date when it was accessed. And some people might choose to add another when for this layer up here for the layer about the original image. But Elizabeth's example didn't have that, so I just went ahead and followed that. But it's up to you, and you can add to things if you need to. So this is what I came up with, and I studied it, made my citation, and now I felt like I understood how to cite these records in the typical way that genealogists normally do it. Well, the next step would be to set up the template with Online Repository Assistant. And I love Aura. Ever since I learned how to use it, I have kept up my subscription because it just makes things so much easier. Well, Aura didn't have a template for this online repository, the Bureau of Land Management, so it just shows up in Aura as generic. This is the side panel that appears on all web pages for Aura, and you can minimize it so it's really small. If you open it up, it scrapes some information from the page into this little table for you. And then once you're on that page, then you can go over to the Aura settings and make a citation template based on some of this information and putting it in the order that you want. I have a blog post about how to use Aura. If you're interested, you can go back to this presentation and the slides and you can click this link or just search it on Google. But if you want to learn how to do it, you can read that. Well, I'll show you a little bit more about Aura settings. So there's a little browser extension that you install, and when you click on that, it it opens the settings page in a new browser window, and it shows some of the basic information from the page, like this is the web page that you're looking at. And then you can create a new text template by clicking the plus, and then you can put in the different things that you're wanting to include in your citation in the order that you want it. So let's zoom in and see. I put in patentees and then the county, which wasn't scraped by Aura. So I had to put this little curly bracket to remind myself I have to add that myself. The state, the cash entry patent number, the document number. If it's not surrounded by square brackets, that means it's static text. And so I put in a lot of static text here, but then what Aura is scraping is in the square brackets. So it's scraping the document number, it's scraping the page URL and the page access date. So it just puts in today's date for that. So those are the details that Aura got for me. And then I added this static text here. And then I click test. And when you click test, you can see what it's going to look like based on the order and the punctuation and the static text you added. So the problems I noticed are that it puts the name in all caps with the last name first, which isn't the way I wanted it. It doesn't grab the county name, so you have to add that. And then the rest looks pretty good, actually. Cash entry patent number, and this looks great. So it's pretty good. It's just this first part that needs help. And to me, it just seemed annoying to have to go change the names all around and retype that. So then this is what it looks like when you go to that page and you refresh the Aura panel. Now you have a text template that you created and it's labeled citation. That's what I titled it. Then I can click this clipboard button and it will copy that and I could paste it into my research log. But instead, I wanted AI to fix it up. So one more step was to create a custom GPT to correct the citation. So here's what it looks like when you configure a custom GPT. This was the simplest GPT I've ever made. It just says, take a citation that looks like this and make it look like that. And it was pretty fast and easy to make and save it. Citations for BLM patents. And so I said, take a citation that looks like this and make it look like this. It didn't save italics. It doesn't allow you to have italics here. So I had to say, do not make anything bold because it was doing that at first. And then make sure that you italicize the name of the website, General Land Office. And then if the user doesn't give you the county, ask them for the county. So after setting that up, I went to a different patent. This one was for Ephraim Keaton. And then I copied it and pasted it into my custom GPT and wrote the word Lowndes here for the county name. And if anyone knows how to say that county name, let me know. It's in Mississippi. And then I pressed the enter button. And then I had my final citation that I could copy and paste into my Airtable log without having to retype everything. And then I put everything into my Airtable log, and now I have over 10 consistently crafted citations that are the same, except for the details are matching the patent. So they're consistent one to another, which I really appreciated, not having to type these all out myself. So that might seem like a funny workflow, but it worked for me and I liked it. So it's great to see how AI can help us speed things up, especially with formatting, where I had already learned how I wanted to do it and I just had to retype things, and AI could really do well with that. So my takeaways from this were that using online repository assistant and a custom GPT um, was just very helpful and efficient. Without an example, my first thing that I showed, AI did okay. It wasn't terrible. Um, so that actually worked fine. And if I would have kept using that same conversation, it probably would have formatted all of them consistently throughout the whole conversation if I just would have kept putting the screenshots in. But I did like the one that I chose, how it used the document number on the original image and focused on that original image. Aura helps scrape info from the page, which I really like, gets that URL. The custom GPTs for frequently used records can help speed up the process. So if you use a lot of Bureau of Land Management records, then you might appreciate doing this same type of thing. And I really always notice that whenever we can give an example to the AI, it helps it so much to be consistent and to get an output that is what we are expecting. All right, do we have any comments or questions on this
Yeah.
workflow?
Yes, we have some different questions. A couple of comments that I trained Claude to use EE formats by putting a template document in the project knowledge, and it works pretty well. So I do that as well, and it's nice. Okay, Robin asks, I understand physical and digital layers, but sometimes there's a third layer, citing. Can you explain when the citing phrase is used?
Yeah. Well, it used to be really important to genealogists to show that an online image was also like available in an offline place. And that's when the citing layer was used. But in the latest edition of Evidence Explained, that was dropped. And so I think it just became so much more common for genealogists to access images online that that was the way people were doing it. And so hardly anyone was going to the National Archives to view a census. So it just became irrelevant to put citing National Archives, microfilm XYZ. Like nobody's doing that.
Mm,
So it just became extra work that we were all doing. We didn't really know why we're doing it. And so it's kind of unnecessary. There are times when you would still want to use it for a lesser known item that people might want to go find it in an archive. So
mhm.
if the archive or place where it's viewed is somewhere that, and there's not a lot of options to view it online, it might still be useful. Like maybe the archive emailed you something and you're citing that and you want to say, citing this repository because that's where you got it from. And it will help the reader to know where it came from. Then, yeah, you would want to include the citing layer.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just something to use your common sense and maybe to think about just erring in adding too much information that you could take out if you didn't want it there. But for your own research, it's always nice to know where did this come from? Like the Arkansas tax records that we use a lot, those are at the Alabama State Archives. I mean, we want to know where they came from, or not Alabama, Arkansas. And so it can be helpful just to remind us about maybe where these are from.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's a question. Is there a Mac utility that's similar to Aura that seems to be only available on PC?
great question. And I'm glad someone brought that up because I always forget that. As far as I know, there isn't, but I wonder if somebody could create one with AI now that it's so much easier to write code with
Maybe.
AI.
And I did link in the chat to your blog post about automated source citation builders, which talks about Zotero. And somebody mentioned that in the chat that Zotero works. There's RecordSeek, Goldie May. There's some different things out there. So, if you're interested in getting something automatic, you can certainly go look at that blog post and try some different things out.
Yeah, and really the first thing that I showed that was so simple was just taking a screenshot of the URL and the record page and having AI write you a citation. That was a very
I agree.
Very A-OK citation.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll have AI do that and then I'll fix it up. And then I'll say, okay, do the rest of them just like this. Like if you
Right.
have a run of tax records and you screenshot the entire page so that it'll get the URL. And sometimes on Family Search, you have to change to the information to get the IGN number. But
Hmm.
if it has a little example from what you want it to do right there on a specific record type, it
And then at
works
that
really
point would be
well.
so good to create a custom GPT because you've already figured out all the things you need to tell it to get your intended output. So
Yeah.
in that conversation, now you just say, write me a prompt to get this output, and then copy and paste that prompt into your custom GPT. And then you can always come back to that record type and cite it the same consistent way every time.
So great. That's a great comment. Okay, so Sue says she's still using citing for archives holding the originals, like the NARA microfilm series and forum archives. And then Robin says John Cardinal is the Aura developer and he hopes to have a Mac version available soon.
Oh, well, that's exciting. I didn't know he was working on a Mac version.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, and then Wendy says I have templates, EE notes, and RLP notes in a Notebook LM and use that to help craft citations. That's been super helpful. So Notebook LM is a large language model and it is free. You can use it's like projects in Claude that you have to pay for, and you can put all of your information in there and have it help you do things. So that's really fun. I hadn't thought to use that for citations.